segue into our session, I think we've seen so far very interesting, intriguing, the Microsoft section and the last one of Tony's and Bruce. It is all connected. I believe we've seen through the poll in the Microsoft session how ransomware is the top concern, and Roee and I would like to deep dive into that. I believe that it is only getting more and more enhanced, the risk. Today we have the Russia-Ukraine war, and it adds a lot of geopolitical motivation to the attackers, to the state-sponsored, state-level attackers. But even if we look at the economics of what is the ransomware market, we see that the market itself grows all the time. We're seeing that the enterprise market or the SMEs market, they are growing as a business market, and the target is bigger and more lucrative to the attackers. It leads to competition between the attackers. All those groups, whether state-sponsored or not, they compete with each other. They develop new techniques, new tools, whether it's attacking the supply chain using triple extortion capabilities, IT infrastructure, OT, critical infrastructure, all those techniques, all those targets, attack vectors, requires more and more capabilities. And also we're seeing collaborations between those groups. The data points that we're sharing now on the screen from 2021 stats, it's only a token for how deep is the problem. When we speak today with our partners in the market, this is obviously a very enhanced concern. Let's just have a glimpse at the data points here on the slide. We're seeing that 50% of the victims, they pay. This is actually the last one on the bottom right. 50% of the victims pay the ransom demands, but they can recover only 25% of the data. I believe that we have a very interesting session that Roee and I prepared. A great opportunity to introduce Roee, who was appointed only a few months back to lead the global organization of CyberProof security operations. And he brings a lot of experience from his career and actually from the past few months, because we have seen those challenges in the market ourselves in CyberProof. Maybe before we start, Howard, you're still in the background. If we can run a short poll with the team. Yep, there we go. So we have a short 3-question poll. If you guys, the honorable audience, can fill those questions about the industries, personal or organizational experience, and the measures that you would recommend or thinking of taking, that would be great. Let's run that poll, and we will share the results down the road. Let's give it another few seconds, Howard, right? Okay. Thank you guys for filling that. Let's move on. So from what we're seeing now on the slide, market is growing, numbers are huge. The business impact is significant. Security operations is mostly about protecting the business. So in the tabletop exercise, we will try to connect the dots, and this is a good opportunity to hand it over to you, Roee. Let's start and keep it dynamic. We will also try to engage the audience through it to make it more live. Go ahead.
Thank you, Yuval. Thank you, everyone, for joining this exciting session. Echoing what Yuval said, some of us might be under the impression that the cyber incident is actually a pure technological issue. Our paradigm actually states that it's not a technological issue, but rather an organizational issue, and it needs to be addressed as such. Meaning, aside from the technological track, which takes place and is very much explored, there is somewhat less explored track of the management's role within a cyber incident. And this is exactly where the purpose of this session. So let's get started. We'll get familiarized with Divine. Divine, a revolutionary cosmetics firm that is very, very much profitable and has a revolutionary intellectual property around a mobile app, which can actually, believe it or not, can actually assess a person's skin condition using the mobile phone and recommend the proper cosmetic products in order to match it exactly to the person's needs. So early morning, as most cyber incidents start, I don't know who had the unfortunate pleasure of dealing with cyber incidents with his respective organization, but a cyber incident doesn't usually start with the logo cyber incident, be aware. It starts with multiple calls, the same with Divine, multiple calls to the help desk, saying that users cannot access files and are seeing strange messages. At this point, this is all we know. Obviously, the help desk starts to investigate, and what they identify after an hour is our ransom notes. From this point on, we assume in a very high confidence that this is indeed related to cyber, the malfunctions that we're seeing. So this is a Divine, I didn't say before, it's a very well organized organization. It has a very strict procedures. They have what we call an incident response procedure, and the issue gets escalated to the information security team, which starts to investigate. They investigate their ransom attack, and they actually conclude that it is a ransomware attack. Why? Because as we saw before, it's not just about the ransom notes, it's actually about files that are inaccessible. So, as I said, very well organized, a very much formalized incident response procedure. The issue gets escalated according to the procedure to the CSO. From here on, there are two separate tracks that are happening. One is a full investigation by the information security team, meaning this is the what I mentioned before as the technological track. But there is another parallel track in which we want to touch base on in this session, which is management's role. So C-level executive meeting takes place in order to assess the situation. And the CSO comes to the meeting and presents to management what he knows so far. So what we know is there are multiple calls to the help desk. There are hundreds of workstations that are infected with ransomware. And we've got a request from the attacker requesting 10 Bitcoins. 10 Bitcoins equals an amount of $400K. So the meeting takes place. And there are quite a few questions that that needs to be answered as part of this meeting.
Yeah, I think Roee, from C-level at this point of time, 2 hours after the events started, they will be somewhat panicked. They will ask many questions about where we are, how can we pay, shall we pay, Bitcoin account, what will be the financial impact. I think these are the list of questions that we're seeing here is a preliminary response of the C-level that will only get deteriorated over time. This is how I identify the perspective of the board and the top management.
I totally agree. I mean, at this point, this is the exact point where, and again, Divine does everything right. So it's been escalated in 2 hours, C-level meeting already occurs. The questions already are on the table. Can we pay? If we want to pay, can we pay? Exactly as you said it, do we have backup or not? They're getting ready for whatever comes next. And this is exactly where we need to make a decision. At the end of the day, there is a yes/no question. Do we pay or do we not pay? And this is the place where, Howard, I think we would really like to hear our audience and what do they think? What would they have done if they were on the management's meeting at this point?
Okay, just 1 second. Let's just make sure that I'm able to pull it up. 1 second. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Please, make your vote. If only life could be.
While we're all voting, I think it's important to say that there are a lot of options here, right? But we can all narrow it down to 3 options. One, we can pay, and we get the key, the decryption key, and everything is back to normal. We can pay and we can get nothing. But there's a third option of paying and getting a key which is infected with another piece of malware. So please, when you vote, please take that into consideration and see if that changes what you thought before.
Okay, should we end the poll now? It's quite clear what people would like. Okay, should I share the results?
Yeah, please. It'll be interesting. Okay, and Mr. President, it's your call. I think it's pretty clear what the participants think, but Yuval, this is your call at the end of the day.
Yeah, I will follow the crowd and the audience, and I would say that we were not paying.
Democracy, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so we're not paying. Let's see what happens. Okay, 24 hours passes. And we get complaints from distributors around financial charges. Now, this actually means that from lateral movement is happening, basically. From workstations, the attacker actually has a foothold within the network and is able to laterally move and get to the financial systems. This is basically what it means. And in parallel, the CEO is actually receiving another message from the attacker saying the demand is increased into 150 Bitcoin, which calculating real fast equals an amount of around $6 million. So from $400K, now the demand stands on $6 million. Again, what do we know so far? We know that there are inaccessible files. We know that we've seen ransomware notes. We know this is a ransomware attack. We got the demand from the attacker. Mr. President decided not to pay according to the meeting's vote. And in addition, we know that there are issues with the financial system. There's another demand, increased demand of 150 Bitcoin. And this is where another meeting takes place. We are at day 2, more than 24 hours after the initial malfunction of our systems. And some more questions needs to be addressed as part of this meeting.
Yeah, I think that the leadership, board members, and top C-suite executives would like to know what's next. Do we really need to pay? What measures the security operations are taking? What further actions we need to approve? Budget to be allocated? Engagements that potentially we should take? And again, the business impact. We need to assess the business impact. Where a company, investors are looking at us, and we need to provide answers. So the panic is not settled exactly. On the other hand, the stress is still there, and we need answers and more certainty, which is hard to provide with.
But again, at the end of the day, we need to make a decision, right? There's a demand in the air, and we need to make a decision. And it's up to you again. guys, please. In parallel, I will say that on one hand, we saw the numbers from Divine, very profitable company. Maybe we should have just paid the $400K and be done with. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it was worth the risk, by the way. On the other hand, I can tell you that there are lists actually, of what we call organizations that are prone to extortion. So organizations that actually paid ransomware before, they're actually more prone and more a sexier target for a future ransomware attacks to occur again and maybe get paid again.
It's a deterrence perspective, right? It's not the first attack, and there will be many more down the road per your response. The way you respond to the first attack will impact the depth and the number of the future attacks. So the decision taken now is a long-term decision, not only short-term. I want to take that off my back.
Exactly. But then again, maybe $6 million in such a profitable company is something that is worth the risk. Who knows what will happen next?
Yeah, let's see what the audience thought. Ooh, even bigger no.
Yeah, they're even getting tougher.
Yeah. Okay.
It's on them at the end of the day.
We're not paying then.
Okay, and the decision is not paying again. Okay, if that's what you want to do, let's do it. So day 3, 1:30 past midnight, and we got complaints from distributors saying that the orders are being mixed up. Again, from a CISO's perspective, what we're seeing here is, again, reaching out to different types of systems within the organization. So we started with the endpoints, we moved laterally to the financial systems. Now we're dealing with the logistics system. By no doubt, the attacker has a foothold within our network, no doubt. And he's able pretty much to do whatever he wants. 400 Bitcoin, this is, by not paying, this is actually what we've done. We've made our attacker angry, and now he wants 400 Bitcoin, which is an obscene amount of money. And
but Roee, why didn't they ask that in the first place? Why did they start with a lower number?
That's a good question. With ransomware, we can never know. Ransomware sometimes is around for financial reasons. Most of the time, the motivation behind ransomware attacks is actually pure economic reason. Sometimes it's about causing harm to the organization. Sometimes it's about the ransomware, and you've mentioned it before, double extortion, triple extortion, is about leaking data, which the actual incident will come afterwards. It's not about, there were several ransomware attacks here in Israel. Israel, by the way, unproportionally to its size, has a massive amount of ransomware attacks occurring every 24 hours. And it actually were a lot of ransomware attacks that eventually were not about money, were about the data itself, about the data that was leaked. So so it can go either way.
Yeah.
So aside from what we know so far, in addition, we know that packages are delivered to the wrong destinations, and there's a new demand for a truly obscene amount of money. 2:30, Yuval has no mercy, and he gains all the executive leadership into the room at 2:30 a.m. He does that in CyberProof as well, just so you know.
So yeah, I think that day 3, actually, it's 2.5 days into the crisis, almost 3 days now of this nightmare. We need to make some tough decisions. How do we adjust our business, the huge profit-generating business, into the new situation? What should we do? This is a business decision more than anything else, and the dynamics taking place on the security level should help. But right now, more people in the room are concerned about where we're going as a business, our reputation, etc. And the longer it takes to resolve, the bigger the concern the market shows to us, whether it's investors or customers or vendors and employees, of course. That would characterize the questions that you're posing now.
By the way, I'm not sure if we all noticed, but just looking at the questions and the answer that needs to be given, you see that this is really a multidisciplinary issue. So we have public relations that needs to address what we're doing with media, what are we saying to whom and when. Obviously, operations officer needs to bring operations back to normal. The CISO needs to make sure that even if the ransomware, if we are able to deal, when we'll be able to deal with the ransomware attack, and when, how do we make sure that this is not happening again? And CEO obviously needs to orchestrate everything, financial issues. How do we register that in the books? Are we allowed to pay? How can we pay? Do we have a Bitcoin account, as we saw before? This is really a multidisciplinary effort, and this is what we've mentioned before. This is another track that is happening parallel to the technological track that involves a lot of disciplines and is part of the organization trying to cope with the cyber incident. And again, we're in the junction of making the decision. I will take a wild guess and assume that the audience will decide not to pay. But maybe since what we've seen so far is that the attacker actually is able to move around our network, is proven to be able to cause harm, and the amount just increases. Maybe now it's time to pay and get it over with. And maybe not. Maybe we'll pay and it won't be over. But you decide.
Yeah, let's wait a few more seconds. Maybe the team, the audience would be more open, given the risk, the business risk and the reputation risk and the regulation risk to pay and get this done, allegedly get this done with.
And take into consideration the fact that the numbers now are massive.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the no
it increases, right?
It only increases proportionally.
I wonder if it's because of the amount that is increasing. And if we haven't paid when it was 400K, what would we pay when it's 100 million? Or I don't know how much.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the
sunk cost effect.
Maybe.
Okay, so we're not paying. We're very persistent with that.
Very persistent. So let's see if our attacker is persistent as well. So 96 hours. I will let you calculate how many days that is. And greenhouses, since we are in the cosmetics industry, we see pretty much operations go down the drain. Okay, irregularity of water percentage, irregularity of temperature, greenhouses, fertilization quantities, storage coolers. Pretty much our entire operations line is put into a halt.
Yeah, this is the production line is
down.
Yeah,
is down pretty much. And we get another message. And now coming back to your question, Yuval, you mentioned that what was the behavior like? Why did the request for the beginning was for what is relatively a lower amount of money, and why the increments in the demand? And now the demand for 1,000 Bitcoin, that's not really feasible, right? This is a truly massive number. 1 Bitcoin, I think, equals today $40K, something like that. This is a truly massive number. So whether it's for maybe if it's serious enough to request such a demand, I don't really know. What we do know is, that the operation is put into a halt, and the new demand is massive. Another meeting takes place, this time in a reasonable hour. And some of these questions along the way, we actually have answers for, right? What foothold does the attacker have in our network? So we know he has the foothold, but in parallel to that, the information security teams, along with the IR teams and along with CyberProof, are investigating and trying to figure out what is the root cause. Okay, so several within the technological track, maybe we'll mention it in a few words. There are some tracks within it itself. So, for example, we want to contain the situation. We want to understand what was the vector that was used. We want to make sure that it doesn't happen again. We want to make sure where is the foothold and how can we stop it. There are we want to check whether the decryption key is out there and we can use it in order to get it over with. There are a lot of tracks that are happening within the technological track, but in parallel, again, executive leadership has to understand what's going on, since pretty much the organization is entirely put into a halt. And every second production lines are not working, the organization loses money.
Yeah, Roee, what from your experience, I guess that investors at this point, and we've seen that, especially if we're 5 days into the event, would start investigate and say, okay, we're sending in troops to see what happened. Our investment is at stake, and looking for, who is responsible for what happened and what measures should be taken. Do you see that kind of pattern taking place while we still have the threat pending and the production lines are down?
It's yes. The answer is yes. We see some, it's not just the investors, right? We have the authorities. Yeah. In some areas, we have national certs that actually put into place, since if it's an entity within the market, it has an economic impact on the specific market segment, then we see authorities come into place. We'll see if it's a public company such as Divine, we'll see them coming into the stock markets, asking questions again as well. So there are there's a lot of regulators and stakeholders that the message needs to be communicated, and they will need to be engaged. Hopefully, not while the organization tries to cope with the incident. Hopefully, they will get the organization. From my experience, it doesn't always happen.
Let me ask you what kind of information, if you can elaborate a little bit more, information is being shared with peers, other colleagues in the industry. Divine is part of a defined industry, because if Divine is under attack, maybe others are under attack, etc. So you mentioned certs, which is a good focal point to share information, etc. What have you seen in those cases?
This is very comprehensive question. So this needs to be managed. Like everything else within a cyber incident, this also needs to be managed. This is why usually we see public relations as part of the management team that actually coping with cyber incidents. With national search, for example, I'm not sure that at this point we'll have what we can, aside from giving status, as long as we're not able to extract indicators of compromise at this point, they will probably, at least from my experience, they will probably offer to assist, and if not, they will wait until the incident is over with, is mitigated, and then try to extract intelligence from it and share it with the entire market. Other authorities, it depends. Some we have to report on the timely manner. We have regulations in place, and the compliance officer has to abide by these regulations, and we need to measure ourselves if we are holding up to whatever we are obligated to do. There's an entire different section of the public. We have customers, we have suppliers, we have the employees themselves. What are we saying to them? Are we saying that we saw organizations that have been ransomed, and the message was to the public was that we're experiencing technical difficulties? I'm sure all of us have seen it somewhere, sometime before in the past. And this is a managerial decision. What do we communicate to whom and when? It's a very complex situation, no doubt.
Okay.
No escaping the yes or no question.
Yeah. So the bar is only growing.
I'm sure it'll be like 90. It's let's bet. I'm betting 92% will say no.
92%. Yeah. Let's see. I think that it's almost like being in a casino. The longer you're there, I risk too much to walk out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's see. What would be the response?
92 red. Let's see.
Yeah. As you said, it's only growing. Okay.
Yeah, no doubt. So
Still on track, not paying.
not paying.
We'll
So
see.
as we said before, sometimes the purpose is not just purely financials. It's actually about the data itself, and the data is being leaked, what we call double extortion, triple extortion, applying to the customers themselves. We see website defacements, we see personal information leaking, we see the media starting to get a hold of the story, data leak, massive cyber attack to the cosmetics firm. Obviously, the stock plummets. That's
opportunity to buy, because from here it will.
That's an opportunity to buy, exactly. Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever, Twitter, whatever. It's everywhere.
Yeah. And it gets to the news.
Yeah, you may need to rerun it when you unshare and then reshare, and then you need to click on the sound, because I'm not sure we can hear it.
Roee, we cannot hear it.
Can you hear it?
No, we cannot. You need to reshare. Howard, can you guide Roee? Because
Yeah.
Had managed to gain access to personal data such as usernames, phone numbers, and photos of over 9 million people. According to our reporters, an anonymous attacker has been extorting Divine's management for several days now while demanding a high ransom to stop the attack. Cybersecurity experts say that this time it seems to be a sophisticated attack aimed specifically at the large cosmetics company, operating in over 100 countries and has dozens of production lines that are probably in your household right now. According to a source close to the incident, Divine was dealing with a cyber ransom attack which reflected in severe disruptions of the company's supply and delivery systems that eventually led Divine's management to pay the unknown attackers. Yet the attack had not stopped. The attackers demanded additional money to prevent publication of data. When management chose not to transfer the ransom payment, the attackers published their customers' personal details and photos. The breach occurred after the GDPR regulation was formed on May this year. GDPR imposed data protection responsibility on organizations and companies that collected sensitive and private information from EU citizens. Breaking the regulation rules could lead to a serious fine. The saga continued in the past years. The private sector suffered from data breach that led to the leakage of publications of users' personal information. Early this year, social media giant Facebook announced a massive data breach of over 30 million users. Furthermore, in 2017, Equifax, a large credit reporting agency, suffered from an incident which led to 143 million customers' personal data getting published. As those two corporate giants got sued after security breaches, our news team got new details about an approaching lawsuit on its way to Divine, and from what it seemed to be one of their damaged customers who remains anonymous. According to past incidents, this can lead to an upcoming wave of lawsuits against the French cosmetics company. We will continue to follow and update.
So obviously, with media, you can never know. Once it's there, it goes downhill, right? Whether what was said is actually true or not, it's not always exactly as it seems. We saw publications of, I personally was involved in several investigations in which the organization decided to pay a certain amount. It was published in a much larger amount. Sometimes the organizations decided not to pay, and it was published that the organization paid. Once it gets to the media, you get no control over the story. The attacker
Roee, can you share some updates while this is happening? The reputation and the publication of that, security teams are working very closely. The measures of containment, if you can say a few words about the containment and the actions that your team actually is taking while the business value of the company collapses.
At this point, it's not really about containment. There's no control over this right now. This situation, as we saw, this escalated and laterally moved between the different systems within the company. And again, as I said, this is pretty much a well-organized company. So we're assuming there is a segmentation within the network. Everything resides in its own segment, but we still see a foothold within the network in a way that actually the attacker has the ability to pretty much do whatever he wants, including leaking data. Once it's there and once the media gets a hold of it, it's pretty much out of control. At this point, the organization will probably try to restore the information from backups. But the issue is different. The issue now is around the PII that was stolen, concerns, as we see, about the reliability of the data, which is a tougher situation to cope with, because once you're not sure whether your data is reliable, now there are a lot of questions that come from it. When was it? When did it start? Maybe the data wasn't reliable to begin with, even before the formula. When was the foothold taking place? Maybe the attacker is in the company, resides within the company for months. Studies show that it takes organizations around 180 days to understand they've been hacked. This means that pretty much most of the year, someone resides within the organization's network and the organization doesn't even know. So at this point of time, going back to your question, at this point of time, this is pretty much what we have to do is pretty much start to build a network from scratch.
Yep.
Again, we see everything escalated. Another meeting takes place, more questions, EU civilians, we saw that. So the media described the GDPR, and now management has to debate around that. Recall, obviously, do we need to reinforce people? Do we need to add people to the customer services center, which are swamped with customers? Should we issue a statement on the website and that's it? It's out there anyway, so why not? And obviously, at this point, there is no. I mean, it's there. If we haven't paid this far, then obviously there's no reason
the
to.
price is irrational at this point. Looks like
it's irrational. It doesn't look like the attacker actually wants us to pay.
Yeah, exactly.
With ransomware
which
attacks,
means that even if we pay, it doesn't mean that it would stop. There will be new demand. So I think that in that case, the answer should be easy, but let's wait for our audience.
Once the attacker actually used this joker, which is leaking the data, then it's pretty much game over in terms of trying to, to reason, sort of speak with the attacker or debate whether we should pay or not. The data is out there, damage is done. And the numbers, as you said,
whether what further data does the attacker have?
That's a very good question.
Yeah, and what kind of information the security operations can share with the management to make the right decision about exposure or further data? How would you respond to that?
At this point, it would be crucial to understand. And this is obviously ransomware attacks from, it's a bit different than other types of incidents because you can pretty much prepare for that. One of the steps that the organization is supposed to take is map their valuable data. Specifically for Divine, this is the intellectual property. And that's, at this point, it would be crucial to understand where our IP resides and was it leaked or not. So a lot of effort will be put into the areas where our intellectual property is, and for running forensics in order to understand whether this was compromised or not. Yeah, it's. I
think the message is clear.
It's clear, not a surprise there. IP, and this is exactly what we just spoke of. It seems that the intellectual property itself was leaked and was sold to a Chinese competitor. And this actually means that the stock continues to drop. And this is, as we say, game over. Once the intellectual property is out there, this is obviously the foundation of a company, such as Divine. So, what did we see so far? We saw, and that was, as we said before, the intention was to raise the awareness towards a less explored a part of organizations coping with cyber incident, and that's management's role. A cyber incident, obviously, results are as far as the imagination goes, but from what we've seen in this exercise, a lot of pain points, ranging from financial damages to reputation and the brand bleeding, trying to resume operation while this incident continues, a lot of regulation, and some organizations, we might be surprised, don't even know what the regulations are before they get hacked. And once the things you're not doing before an incident, doing it within an incident just doesn't work. With all the stress that is going on, with all the chaos, starting to analyze who do we need to report to and what do we have to say, this is not a situation we want to find ourselves at. Legal liability, obviously, loss of current and future revenues, and worst case scenario, that's losing the intellectual property of the company.
Roee, before we go there, what retroactively looking at the flow of events, the sequence of events, what measures could have been taken to avoid this miserable result of game over, as you call it?
So as I said, ransomware is massive, as you stated at the beginning of this session, but it's also one of the types of incidents that you can actually prepare for. Meaning that making sure that we have backup in place and making sure that the backup itself is air-gapped and not infected with the ransomware. So when we need it, it will actually be clean and available. Testing it in order to make sure that once we try to restore, it's actually being done. Understanding the restoration process. Where do we start? Do we start with mission critical servers or systems? Do we need to start with financial systems before we actually restore the logistic systems, and so on? These are all types of activities that every organization should take yesterday, not today. These are all things that will make the difference between our ability to cope with ransomware or not being able to cope with that. Now, since the double extortion is in place, meaning data leakage, and triple extortion, meaning approaching customers and saying, we have your data, go to Divine and tell them that they should pay because you don't want your PII to be leaked. It means that we also need to monitor ourselves in a very, very profound manner. Since obviously these types of incidents don't occur with a touch of a button. These types of incidents in which there is lateral movement within the network, it means that the attacker resided within the network for a period of time before the actual incident started. So data leaking should have triggered an alert within, and we see that. We see that when we're helping our customers cope with such incidents, we're able to alert them and say, listen, there are big amounts of data moving. We should try to assess and understand what is happening and what the potential damage is in case this is malicious, or in case we find that this is malicious. We need to have proper monitoring in place. So if we have the ability to restore, and if we have the monitoring in place to make sure that data is not leaked when push comes to shove, I think this will put us in a pretty decent place in order to cope with such incidents.
Right. So it's about, Roee, as you say, it's about making the right preparations to have the right security posture and procedures, and the team and the talent. I think that we are doing today in CyberProof. It's also about, and this is one outcome, I think, or insight from this session, it's about how the business is prepared. So we have the security layer, but also to understand how to operate the PR mechanism and the investor relation mechanism, and how to work with the authorities and regulations, etc. So all that together, I believe that a business from the board and management leadership level should acknowledge that risk. And the bigger the trend of the ransomware in the market, and we've seen some of that in the short video you shared, the more awareness we need at the C-level and in the boardrooms. So that is also part of that. On that point, I would like to refer, and we saw that at the chat, there is a great report that was written by your team, Roee, on ransomware, the history and the future, and the measures that should be taken in advance. So I warmly recommend to read it and to publish it. You can see that in the chat link and also on our website. More than that, also Laufer from our team referred to another report of the playbooks that should cover some of the risk or some of that exposure. So lots of interesting materials that our teams in CyberProof prepared and published. So I recommend you read it and share it with each other. Also, like 50 minutes ago, we published a poll on how you, the audience, are seeing the risk. Let's see, Howard, if we can share the results. Okay, so the first question was the industry, right? We're seeing that all of them, not something specific, maybe healthcare more because of the data, because of regulations, I can only assume. So the result of the first question, which industry do you think are most threatened by ransomware attacks? So we're seeing banking with 7%, retail with 0%, which is surprising in a way. I still remember the Target attack was attacked 5 years ago or 4. Healthcare 22%, the critical infrastructure only 4%. Although I would say that the Ukrainian-Russian war, Ukraine-Russia war would surface the critical infrastructure to a higher end, and all the industries at risk 67%. Yeah, I think Roee, any comments on the result of the first question?
I agree that retail is kind of surprising.
Yeah,
There's a lot of financial motivation there. But again, all industries are at risk. Totally to the point.
Yeah. Second question was, has your organization experienced a ransomware attack in the past 12 months? So 22% said yes, we suffered a ransomware attack. 11% yes, we suffered several ransomware attacks. 67% of the audience participants said that no. I would say not yet. The risk is there, and I'm happy that we have a safe and secured audience. I think that we should look at the trends in the market, and the risk is only growing. So let's keep it 67% no, but we need to take the right measurements to prevent it. Third question, what does your organization do to ensure business continuity in case of ransomware attack? 67% said we have business continuity contingency plans in place.
Wow.
4% said we don't have anything, and 30% said we're not sure. So I'm optimistic based on that poll. What do you think, Roee?
I think getting back to question 2, I think I'm not sure who said that. I think it was Eugene Kaspersky, if I'm not mistaken. But he said that there are 2 types of organizations: one that it's been hacked, and another that doesn't know it's been hacked. So again, I totally agree. It's not a question of if; it's a question of when. So organizations that have not experienced a ransomware attack, this is the exact moment to prepare. And because somewhere, sometime along the way, this will probably, in a high percentage of probability, will happen. Yeah. It's very reassuring to know that 67% of respective organizations by our participants actually have BCP plans in place. That's really reassuring.
Yeah, I agree. As the market grows and the risks are growing, there are also more ideas, capabilities to use to protect. I think your team, Roee, is working hectically to absorb as many tools as possible to make sure that our customers are secured, and I'm sure that the market takes it more and more seriously. Again, I'm coming back to what the Microsoft session at the beginning of the SOC Masterclass, what we've seen, what we've heard from Ken from Microsoft, that would only grow. And it's a global, the whole industry, it's not only CyberProof, of course, the whole industry is looking at that as a top concern. So thank you, Roee, for sharing all that knowledge through a very dynamic live exercise. Howard, I think we're a bit more precise than I thought we would be. Over
very
to you.
Precise. You did a great job. Well practiced. There was an incredible amount of information there. I think given a lot of people a reason to pause. I have to say that I actually think that the fact that there's 30% of people who are not sure is actually quite a disturbing number. I think everyone, many modern large organizations do, training programs. Being aware that there's actually a contingency, I think is important for everyone to be aware of. But really, thank you very much for that session. I think everyone enjoyed it and saw that there was actually no drop off in any of the participation in the last hour. So kudos to both of you. Okay, so we're going to take literally a 3-minute pause. Please stay with us, and we were going to bring in the next session. So let's just take a 3-minute break, and then Karina and Asaf will be joining us. So stay with us.